When I first met her, she took my breath away. Her eyes pierced right through me, haunting, iceberg blue. Yet her warmth was infinite, radiating with a beauty so true it made me gasp. Her hair drenched in seawater, she was magnificent. And all I wanted was to smell her skin, breathe in that fresh air she carried deep within, her seductive soul. I knew it was love. No, not love, something far bigger than all the cliches I had stuck in my mind. The kind of ease and comfort you long to find and maybe never will. I remember her questioning our connection. I guess she always knew we weren't a good match. Almost as though she knew I'd try to snatch that beauty, that freedom, that power. And these moments spent in each other's arms are moments I find hard to forget. And it hurts that this could have lasted if only I had let myself listen. But I wanted too much. I wanted to own her, possess her, control her. Control things I shouldn't have tried to control. And all these years of senseless ignorance came tumbling down like a wall, all too soon. She begged me to change, endlessly presenting statistics I didn't quite understand, about temperatures rising and the death of all that land. She talked about animals and ecosystems with the passion of a mother, caring and kind. But it was too much and I couldn't help but stay blind. I couldn't bear to admit that the things I do day by day contribute to her suffering in so many ways. So these iceberg eyes turned to snow, and then to water. As life melted from within, her salty lips now fading and thin, her rainforest scent now filled my lungs with the suffocating smoke of burnt wood. But that still wasn't that moment, that point in time where I understood the pain I was causing. So she slowly gave up her life, while I watched her disappear. And I hesitated because although I felt that fear, the powerless reality without her there, the burn of her coming absence, the giant unknown, I couldn't let go. No, not of her. I couldn't let go of habits that caused this destruction, and even that fraction of change seemed like eternity. But now I'm here, alone. And I still miss the faint smell of the rainforest and the deep end in the sea. But it's only now that I truly realize there is no planet B.
Cheers. The lens through which we're looking is of growth. Welcome to ʻdʌbl. I'm your host, Kory Williams, and on this month's show, to my right, I have
Anna. So my name is Anna and I'm a psychologist, psychotherapist, and a poet.
and to my left,
I'm Tish, co-director of Poetical Word, musician, poet, and painter of my mum's house currently. Yeah, that's what I do. That's what I'm doing.
So this month we're going to be talking about the difficulties that you face.
Scooching over here.
The difficulties that you face on the rise of going through creativity. It could be writer's block, it could be anything really. As for the title of this episode, how do you guys feel about it? What do you think one of the things, or maybe a few of the things that kind of stop you from sharing stuff or blocks in creativity?
What blocks my creativity? I think sometimes, I mean, creating stuff or sharing stuff. I feel like these are two completely different things.
They are two different
as well.
Mm-hmm.
So sharing stuff, sometimes I feel like if I write something and it's a bit too intense, like I feel like I just went through this now, then I feel like it has to wait a little bit. I feel like it's a bit too intense. But then if I get over that and if I share it, it's always very powerful if it's something very personal. So it's kind of like, so that sometimes stops me from sharing it if it's very, very real and if I know that it's about someone and then they might like read it or see it or hear it or something, then I'll be like, oh shit. But then if I get over it, I feel like I almost get more out of it. But that sometimes stops me for sure.
Sometimes that happens quickly as well. You get over it and you're ready. It's ready to go basically.
Exactly.
After it.
It's not really about getting over it, but like being ready to share it.
Yeah,
sometimes
for real,
you're still
man.
experiencing. But
And
then,
this, I mean, sure, man. And there's some things that will just like will just take ages. Maybe never.
Exactly. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean. Like I've written stuff that I've shared with a few people, but as for sharing it with more people, I'm not sure I feel ready. It feels too, like you said, like too raw, like it's just happened. But then there's some things like you were saying, like you write it and it's just like, when can I perform this? Like I want to get it out now. So it's kind of a mix of the two. But you saying it's different. So sharing, what about creating, and what would stop you creating?
So honestly, sometimes what stops me from creating is like random distractions, like random like procrastination. And it's like I even have I have an idea and I feel like it'd be like really nice to like sit down and write some stuff. And then I'm just like, oh, I'm gonna watch this, and I'm just gonna watch like one episode.
Fancy putting the kettle on or something, and then by that time it's gone.
Exactly. Or like, oh, I'm gonna. And I actually wrote a poem about this. So every time I have some kind of like, that's my own kind of strategy. If I have
Did it take a long time to write the poem?
No, actually, ironically. But if I have some kind of like writer's block or something that stops me from like creating, I always try to get over that by writing about that. So I wrote like a poem about procrastinating, and it's just like so weird sometimes. Like you want to do something, but you're just like watching random TV shows. Like I don't know, just like I'm gonna go out for a party. I'm just gonna write this later. I'm gonna call a friend. Yeah. So personally, that's what stops me. Procrastinating.
But then you're left in this position where it's such a rush to get it done.
Yeah.
Do you feel like that? I don't know, sometimes I feel like that's the best place, but then I don't like being there because then I feel unprepared if I don't get it finished, or I have this, if I leave it all to the last minute, then I just have the last minute to get it done and I don't have this time to maybe proofread it and share it around.
So it kind of almost sucks to miss the opportunity to be given that, to create something within the deadline, because like even if you create something past the deadline, you might have created it still, but it wouldn't have had that right effect because that was the allotted time like in life for that to happen.
Yeah,
man. I mean, something that stops me to creating is kind of like an ego thing. It's very easy, like being as a curse of the performer, I think, is that like sometimes you write to perform, you don't always write to write or express something, it's like, how you're constantly like thinking, how is an audience going to perceive what I'm writing, eventually if you I don't think I've actually written anything for a long time actually without that kind of point of view.
So it's all about the judgment of other people and what they might,
they might perceive trying to kind of like precognate the thoughts or how it'll be received when it really doesn't matter. It's all at the moment, when you're writing it.
Yeah.
I don't know, I don't tend to think about that too much. Just write dope lines and they sound cool.
The next pad.
And it's just like, I want to share it to see if other people hear what, get excited over the bits that I get excited over. But that's all that I'm interested in other people's perception as opposed to worried about how they're going to perceive it. I want to hear that because in my mind, you already know what I think about something because I've already written it and told you how I feel. So I'm more interested on how my words affect you and you telling me that, because then I can I see it as kind of creative criticism, so I can say, okay, cool, I've pushed that button, or I didn't even think someone would take it in that way, so it makes you think about what I've said, and then I go back and I look at what I've said and how it could be perceived in other ways I may not have looked at it, which makes it seem like, makes things that could be kind of simple seem deeper than they actually are.
Yeah, it's true.
It also depends like why you create, like what you're trying to achieve. Like is it just self-expression? Yeah. Is it like impressing an audience sometimes? You can have like different at different times, right? Like money. If you're writing
Exactly,
for
some
money,
people's job in that, you know, for real.
that's so different. Yeah. And I feel like here I can talk a bit about this like psychological theory of motivation.
Yes.
So we have like two different types of motivation, intrinsic and extrinsic. So intrinsic is where you do something just because you enjoy it. So you're doing it just for your own like self-expression or whatever, which is where you perform. Like this is when you have this kind of motivation, that's where you perform your best. Like that's where your best self comes out because you're just doing something to express. And then you have extrinsic motivation, which is like you're doing something for some reward. And typically that's money, like in traditional research you see that, but it can also be like to impress someone, to impress your parents, I don't know, to seem like some kind of person, or I don't know, fame or whatever, like to be popular. And the thing is like, from research we can see that in order to have intrinsic motivation to do whatever activity, you need to have 3 needs met. So the first one is competence. You need to perceive that you're actually good at that thing, from like feedback from other people that you've had in the past, or when you, or like also when you compare yourself according to your own feedback as well, you just perceive you're competent. The second one is autonomy. So you feel like you have you have control over whatever you're doing. So no one is telling you have to write a poem about this, but you're just like, I'm just gonna write about whatever. And then the third one is relatedness. So that's like you perceive that you have support of people, of friends or family. And very often, if you don't have like one of these needs met, that's where you don't have this intrinsic motivation, and that's where you just focus on the extrinsic rewards.
Yeah, because it's just a quick fire way to get that. As opposed to kind of doing the real work inside, you know. But
that's the thing. I feel like if you look at that theory, and then you think about creative expression and like creative like arts in general, and all these industries, you can see a lot of issues because, for instance, with competence, like art is so subjective. So it's like, what is good, right? So I feel like over time, it's kind of hard to be motivated for a lot of artists because it's like you can be, you know, really good when one person judges you, then another person will come and say, well, I didn't really like that.
Yeah, exactly. And then you crumble. You will crumble because you're trapped in the perceptions of other people. You know? I think that's like the darker side of art and performing, things like that. You know, like the. I mean, some people. If you're one of these types of people that kind of doesn't really give a shit or like doesn't care about people's perceptions and stuff, which is good to a certain extent, then I suppose that would cease to be less of a problem, I guess.
Yeah.
I wonder.
But it's like, you know, if you think of a career in like sports, like let's say, obviously like, because that's also a really difficult like field to succeed in, right? But then it's like either you're good at it or not, like either you're, I don't know, winning your fight or you're losing it, you're, you know, really fast or you're slow. So you kind of have, it's so objective. But then with arts, it's really difficult to make it in terms of, you know, all the competition as well.
It's nuts. There's elements of it that you can learn, and there's skills in it, like, you know, like technique of drawing and painting and color blending and things like that, or building techniques. But then there's like also that let's say that's the extrinsic part of it. The intrinsic part would be like what a person's capability is doing with it, you know. Like, for example, giving somebody a whole bunch of carving tools or something like that, and they're not really good with their hands, you know, so they probably wouldn't be very gratified from that experience. But the opposite was the opposite, you know. Somebody who's pretty cool with that stuff, they wouldn't have a problem with that, and they would kind of find the whole thing a bit more easier to create and show as well, you know.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then that's not to say that the person that would find it hard couldn't just practice until they
for real, man. For real, because that will trump like talent anyway. Practice trumps talent, you know.
But also, I mean, I think talent is also not like just. It's all so subjective in art that it's really hard to like pinpoint what makes what, to be honest. Like even when you look at like singing, I love to sing as well. And like sometimes I look at some famous singers and I'm like, oh well, this person doesn't even have like a good voice. Like they can't even sing live. But they're super famous. Because whatever, they wrote, you know, like they wrote really good songs or they met the right people. You know, so it's really common.
It comes into mind like what's the standard then of like
exactly.
You know, where do you draw the line? Or is it individual?
As I said, it's so subjective. Very subjective.
Yeah.
We kind of just base it on the baseline of what's out there. So
what can someone ask themselves to kind of bring them out, or to help them kind of maintain a high ebb, as it were, of creativity, and to make sure, or to safeguard yourselves from being dropped or from those negative comments, because people do.
Well, man, first off, like, by accepting that they're real, you know,
Yeah,
that could be, that's an option, you know.
That
And yeah,
not everyone's gonna like what you're putting out
Everybody
there.
has
Yeah.
different tastes at
Sure,
the end of the
for
day,
sure,
so
man.
there will always be someone that won't like your shit.
Mm,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
That's important to remember.
But the thing is, like you were saying, subjective, right?
Yeah.
Like, really, a person who's, let's say I'm an artist and I'm subjective, I'm my own thing, my own person creating my own thing. The only person I should really compare myself to is myself
Yeah.
the day before, right? And if
Yeah.
I'm better today, then that's brilliant. But I think what stops a lot of people is it's so easy. It's a very cheeky thing. It's so easy to kind of think you're being subjective, but really caring about what other people think, and
Yes.
that being like a hindrance to the whole thing, you know, creating and sharing, you know. Right.
But then if I don't know, only problem I have with comparing myself to myself is like, who's rating me? Like, no, I get that. I mean, I could rate myself.
Yeah, it's true.
But
But
like,
you could be really biased, isn't it?
yeah,
Sometimes,
exactly. I could just be.
Well, you are biased, like
Yeah.
obviously.
Yeah, for real,
Exactly.
real. Otherwise, you'd be so bland with that bias, you know.
Yeah.
Like, so I'll just, yeah, alright, I'll be alright. Everything's cool. Yeah, whatever. I know what he's having, kind of thing.
That's what I mean. That's the only problem I have with it. It's just that I can accept that. I can tell myself I'm amazing, but like, then I can go in a room and I don't know. I could perform and someone will be like, I don't get the same maybe applause that I get at another
Yeah.
performance, and then it's just like, whoa, hang on.
Yeah.
What did I do wrong? I performed it in the same way. I didn't change anything.
Maybe that was it.
Yeah.
Yeah, after a while, that became the thing, you know.
Maybe you get too comfortable.
Yeah.
But that also like comes down to why you do what you do.
Yeah.
Like again, it actually comes down to what is the root of your motivation.
And if it's a strong motivation, it will keep it fresh for a
Exactly.
while, innit? You
Yeah.
know, because there's people that had the same dream for like years, and they've just done this one thing, you know.
Yeah.
Like again,
Yeah.
like using sports as an example, you know, people like they specialize in something, and then that's it. That's their star thing, you know. They don't get moved around, kind of thing.
Yeah. But I mean, also there's this other like theory in psychology about performance psychology that when you have a dream, you shouldn't have an actual goal. That you should just think of the dream as doing that thing. So the dream is actually being able to do that thing, whether that's for money or not for money. It's just doing that. And if you just focus on like what is it to do, like how does it feel like in your body and in your mind to do that thing? Like how does it feel to play the guitar? And you just like put yourself in that zone. Like that is the dream. So basically your goal should be being able to do the dream as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, you know, whether you get paid for it or not, it shouldn't matter technically. But obviously you have to live.
Yeah.
Definitely, man.
But,
Definitely.
yeah.
I mean, as a musician, that the part in that whole process which was really dope was the feeling of like progressing. Every song and stuff like that. You know, you do something different or you learn something new or whatever, and that progression within that whole system is what kind of keeps it fresh, man.
There's this technique in neuro-linguistic programming where you ask yourselves a series of about 7 or 8 different questions about your goal.
Yeah.
And there are questions like, how will you feel when you've achieved it? What will there be around you? So it makes you visualize it more vividly than you initially did before you ask these questions. And after you go through this exercise, you feel yourself being psychologically pulled towards that as if you're already there. And
Quantum jumping.
Yeah.
You visualize yourself already having that, like already being in that situation, whatever you want to
Definitely,
be. You
man.
see yourself there already, and you feel what you would be feeling.
Yeah.
I think for poets, spoken word artists, it's good for us to feel the good reception of an audience to motivate us to go and keep writing.
Visualization for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But you can visualize it, but then it's kind of about reaching that point.
Yeah. It's like because the part of your mind that does that, it doesn't know what a minute or an hour or a year is. You know, like if your future past or anything like that. It's quite fascinating, man. I don't really know. It's crazy to think. But like the point is that like if your head thinks that's happening now, then like it will kind of transmit something to your brain, and your brain will give you like an idea to do something in a certain way that will make you lead you closer to that, as opposed to just doing it in the same old way, you know. Like if you wanted to be like, you had to visualize yourself as like a really influential poet, you go to an open mic night and you kind of be that in your mind, you know, and then that might make you speak in a certain different way, or to attract attention or start a new conversation or something like that, you know.
It's like fake it till you make it, kind of.
Well, yeah, man, pretty much. But it's not fake if it's like if you're gonna happen, isn't it? Yeah, you know, like
You just have to put yourself into the right state of mind.
Yeah, that's really important.
In order to
succeed. Yeah.
But I feel like in poetry, I mean, what is the, like, I feel like the goal is just writing poetry and sharing it. Like, that is the goal in itself, and that is that dream, kind of.
Yeah, but there's little nuances inside that.
Yeah, like, what else can you really do? I mean, poetry is not, I mean, obviously you can publish books and then you can sell them.
Yeah.
But I guess, you know, if you're a poet, like, money is never going to be your ultimate goal, like, I think. So, yeah.
I mean, like, what it really is like a person's experience or a bunch of ideas, right, that they decide to write down. And now it's like, it's outside, it's not inside anymore, it's on the paper, right? And then it comes out again, like stage 2 of that is when it's spoken at a gig or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's, like, to me, like, a part of it, a small part of that answer of what is poetry is for me, is like that the whole happening of thoughts and experiences being said, you know, in like a go, you know, because you can write a poem about a person's entire life, but like that's a whole life now. How are you gonna express that all in a poem or a bunch of poems or a book or something, you know? But I kind of lost track of the whole point of that thread, but I kind of zoned out while I was talking.
So to help tackle like the difficulties of the rise, would you say maybe setting yourself some goals would help, in the form of kind of visualizing where you can be, like maybe 10 years or 5-year goals or standpoints of where you might be in those places, and how it might feel to live the dream? Like, you know, like when people make those 5-year lists, they usually put like stuff on the list that kind of are possible to reach, kind of put crazy possibilities that possible.
Yeah, it's good to get ridiculous with it, man. You're so conscious, part of your mind is give it a bit more credit than that, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
Because why not, you know?
Yeah, why not, man? Why not? I heard a dope phrase that I'm really starting to believe now, is that like life will pay you any price that you ask of it, you know?
Yeah.
But if you're willing to put in the work for whatever, you know, like it's ridiculous. There's a way of like doing the most ridiculous thing on your list, you know?
There's another saying very, very powerful to that extent, I think, which you told me, if you knew you wouldn't fail, what would you start and how would you do it? Yeah, if you knew success was destined, let's go!
But again, like that's when you start focusing on that extrinsic motivation, like that is my goal and this is what I want to achieve. Versus if you actually want to have your best performance, you should focus on just the feeling of doing that thing.
For sure,
like when you look at the best athletes, like Michael Phelps, like why did he become a swimmer? In most of his interviews, he says, I just loved the feeling of water, and he just wanted to do it all the time. It's the feeling, and he describes it in such a poetic way. He's like, oh, the feeling of water against my fingers. Always like, you know, and it's just like he just loved being in there, and that's why he was so good at it as well.
Yeah, for sure, man.
So that's like the problem of setting these goals in all these artistic and creative fields, and also in sports, that you, I think, lose that focus on self-expression and on just feeling how good it makes you feel.
Yeah, again, like from a musical experience point of view, I've been playing music for like the last 15 years, and I only went to music school studying maybe like 2 years ago for a year.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where like everything was like intuition and like kind of pattern recognition and playing by ear and stuff. And then I got into a room with a bunch of musicians that were technically trained, and they were saying that they were talking the lingo, you know, there's A letters and phrases, and I was like, okay, cool, but I knew the sound of them, but I couldn't identify. So I went to music school and learned all that stuff. And Because what did you just mention before?
Literally,
like, there's a part, you know, like when you let a piece of cloth flow and you're supposed to tack it down. Like that's what I'm trying to do with my head, man.
I was talking about how like in creative industries, it's really hard to keep like to focus on these goals because then you lose that self-expression.
Exactly. I spent 15 years, right, being a musician, and doing everything from how I feel. You know, the expression of that. But I realized that like knowing what I was doing, it didn't lessen the possibilities. It just like made me think about it in a less kind of expressive, natural, raw kind of way. You know. Because when I can identify the patterns of something and you start hearing those patterns everywhere, it's not, oh, that really nice song, it's like, oh, that pattern again, you know?
Yeah.
Like, fucking hell, pop music is my nightmare, man, because it's just like 3 or 4 patterns like mixed up and stuff, man. Like,
I know what you mean, like at college I studied media and we learned about all the camera angles and stuff like that. When I watched a film after studying all that, watching
ruins
film,
you, innit?
Just not watching a film anymore. I was like, oh, okay, cool. They did this camera angle because they were trying to connote this. Okay, cool.
I actually have the same thing because I studied directing for some time. Oh my god, it's the most annoying thing.
Yeah.
Like when you learn that stuff, you're just like, that's what they did. That's what they did. Oh, this is how they did that.
Yeah, that's why they did it. And it's just it ruins it. But then also it kind of makes you better because you're aware of what you're doing, so you can replicate it more as opposed to kind of feeling out.
Yeah, but I think something that could really help what you were saying earlier was like self-expression, right?
Yeah.
It's you can kind of stimulate your self-expression in creative process by expressing yourself rawly in other kind of situations, you know? If you're like having a conversation with someone or you're laughing or something, like just completely express yourself unapologetically in that, you know? Like how you be yourself with someone or whatever. And then that's having momentum of doing that. It's like, oh, I do that with my creative music and writing, things like that, but I also do it when I'm talking to my friends.
Yeah.
You know? I also do it when I'm driving my car or riding my bike, and I also do it like this, so it's easier to open yourself to that self-expression.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because I work as a psychotherapist and I have my private practice, and I see with a lot of my clients, like after they open up about something, a lot of them are like creative people and they go and they like after that after that session they go and create something right away. So yeah, for sure, like expressing it in like conversation or like even in therapy or whatever also definitely helps create stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy amount of art mediums out there.
That's true.
Would it be maybe because you feel like you've let it out in a comfortable space, so once it's out there, it's anyone you can play with it more because you familiarity, you know, like the more you kind of encounter something or engage with it, the easier it becomes to operate around. Like it's less taboo for you or something.
Yeah, for real. Yeah.
Or sometimes just if you acknowledge a problem, like you might not even like maybe you knew you had a problem but you were just not ready to face that for yourself, and then you faced it in a conversation with someone, you're like, okay, now I might as well just create something about it because now I'm ready, kind of.
It's crazy in the conversations that happens that somebody says something and it sparks it off. The conversation is not necessarily about you revealing that or anything. It's just something that makes you reflect in that context, man. And you kind of mull it over and create something. It's crazy, a little spark, you know.
Or just an idea you didn't even think about in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Or a camera angle you didn't see before, you know, or a script point or something, man.
Yeah.
I just have like points really.
Okay, what else are we?
No. I found these like 6 points that kind of cause obstacles in your creativity. So
What are they?
So number 1 is creative thinking rather. So number 1 is lack of direction. Number 2 is fear of failure.
Yeah, we were talking about that.
Number 3 is fear of criticism. Number 4 is striving for consistency.
Driving, wait, what? Driving for?
Striving.
Striving, okay.
Striving for consistency. Number 5 is passive versus proactive thinking.
That's an interesting one.
And number 6 is rationalizing and justifying.
Can we skip to number 5? What do you think? What does passive thinking mean to you? Was it passive and active thinking?
Passive versus proactive.
Proactive thinking. Yeah. What do they mean to you as a psychologist?
Well, if I think of proactive thinking, that means like I'm gonna go and do this, like this, and this is what I have to do that. And passive means more like I'm gonna wait for an opportunity. I'm gonna wait until. So, for example, like now. So, for example, now there's this new spoken word event with like poetry to music. So, let's say someone could go like, oh, you know, I'm gonna wait until something like that comes along, and then I'm gonna write a piece with my guitar.
Yeah.
Versus proactive would be like, I want to write a piece with my guitar. That's what I'm gonna do.
Oh look, a place.
So that's what it is.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Yeah.
Crazy.
What about you? What does that mean to you?
Pretty much the same thing, man. Pretty much the same thing. Yeah. Like because like around 2012, 2014, I went through this massive hippie phase, man. Like I was just like, I grew up a teenager, just doing my thing, you know, nothing really no expanded thoughts about much and all that stuff. And then around 17, 18, they kind of like just started to open my mind up to different things, and loads of cool shit started happening. And went through this massive hippie phase, and I was like, I really dug some of their principles, you know, like the energy and all that stuff like that. But it took me years and years and years of too much smoking and all that stuff to realize that, okay, cool, there's what the real thing might be is something practical you can use, you know, like inside it to on a day to day. And then that part fell away, and then I was left with like just the practical side, and then exercise was like a real big thing, because I think that's something that can really like calibrate you for the like creative process.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, like the other day I was just doing like mobility exercises with my mum and stuff, and she was able to just do the whole garden by herself. Like it was crazy, as opposed to like complaining from back pain and things like that. Like, so I think like mobility, like regular mobility and just little few stretches, things like that take 15 minutes or whatever, you know, could really set you up for that, you know. That's another way you could express yourself, you know, to open up the creative process.
No, that's true, because I'm a dancer, so I used to stretch all the time. And I saw the benefits of how flexible I was, and just how much it just didn't hurt all the time. But like now I don't stretch as much. I'm hurting all the time. I'm always aching.
But you know, it's like once you start it, you can't stop, because like you got to stretch, because you know if you miss it, like.
But then it's also like I feel it just also in my body. I feel more tired, and I can feel everything more like.
And your brain as well. Probably,
everything. But I feel like if I was to stretch more, just maybe like you said, 10 minutes a night or 10 minutes in the morning. It's like time out of my day which I could just. Put towards exercising, but I don't, because I don't know, I'm doing something else. There's always something, I don't know, something that I need to do that's more important. Or that I've placed that's more important, but it's just me procrastinating in a sense and stopping from doing something that would be actually better for me. I don't know.
Habits, isn't it, man? It's all about habits.
It's habits, yeah.
For real, habits like are the things that like we are.
You are what you repeatedly do. For sure,
man. And that literally like I marvel at how that's a physical thing. Like the way you are and the way we look is because of like what we repeatedly do, you know?
Course.
Like like our bodies and our minds and stuff are so moldable. Like I don't think people quite get how much you can really like grow yourself mentally, physically, you know? Like people have been like overweight and miserable, they do exercise and do some things like that repeatedly, and then they find like their skin's better, or they feel something, you know, like it's nuts, man. And then they go for create dope shit, you know.
So I have a question. So if you're kind of just going with the flow and creating as you go, does that mean that you don't have structure? Because for me, I don't know, you can be going with the flow, but if you don't have a structure of where you're heading, then you're kind of just floating around, kind of, in a sense. You're waiting for something to happen.
I mean, it's one way to get things done. That's what I was doing, playing music for 15 years, you know, just waiting for the next like upgraded technique or inspiration to come. But then like being proactive, getting the lessons and stuff, that's another way that I progress, you know, things happen a lot more smoother, because there was that element of direction, you know, or the measurement of progress. Measurement of progress is important. You can't grow if you don't like measure yourself, because it's very easy to just like slip back, you know. It gives you kind of like a track record that you want to like
I feel like a kind of military structure doesn't allow for the fluidity of life.
Yeah.
Yet a laid back approach
Yeah.
doesn't get you anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
you
yeah,
need
yeah.
almost like a fluid way of working, a rough, you know what I'm trying to say. A rough framework.
Be flexible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Adaptability is the number one skill that will be, I think, the mark between someone who's a failure and a success in many terms across the board. And that adaptability is necessary. I think we're wizards at it. We have it in abundance.
It's exactly that. It's like I was watching this plastic documentary on BBC yesterday, and they were talking about how trying to make different supermarkets kind of plasticless, like instead of having single-use plastic, have something more recyclable, or just have a thing where, do you know, like what Waitrose are doing, where you can bring your own containers and you can just use your own stuff instead of like literally. But it's just the idea that supermarkets are saying that they give the choice of having like kind of loose vegetables with stuff that's in plastic, but there's more choice for the stuff that's in plastic than the loose vegetables. And my idea is just, I was thinking about it, if they just changed the whole system in the supermarkets everywhere, we might complain for a bit.
Like overnight.
But we would, even if they just did it overnight, we might complain for a bit. But at the end of the day, that would be the new structure. We would just have to deal with it.
Yeah.
So if they just rip the band-aid off and change things, what are we gonna do really?
Yeah.
And actually it wouldn't be that bad. Like I moved to London in September, and before that I lived in Warsaw. And the first thing that shocked me is in every supermarket there's so much plastic. Like that did not happen in Poland. There was no like cut up vegetables or cut up fruits. You always buy the whole thing and just cut it up.
Do yourself. Come on.
You know? And I was like, why are there all these like berries and stuff in these plastic things? Like you just have to like take like, you know.
That's it. What you need to have is a fork. Literally, right?
No, but like it wasn't inconvenient. It was just how it was.
Yeah.
And nobody complained about it ever. Like literally, I was so shocked how much plastic there is.
So how do we instigate culture change?
Just change things. Literally, just
Like
do
laws,
it.
you know?
Literally, just do it. When there's
Yeah,
only
but
so
that's-
much. Literally, there's only so much power we have right now, or we feel like we have right now anyway. So if they just changed it, what are we gonna really do? We're not doing any even like self-service checkouts. We complained, oh yeah, this is terrible, but no one really complained to the point where we actually weren't
Where it
gonna
went
do
back.
anything about it.
Yeah.
You know? Like it's better because it's more convenient. We don't have to talk to no one. Just swipe through and we're out. It's gonna get to a point where there's gonna be no humans in the shop, and it's just gonna be all self-service
We
checkouts.
should get staff discount then.
You know, it's just that thing where we're gonna complain, but we're not doing anything. So if they just change things, what are we gonna do anyway?
Yeah, British as a British person, I know like growing up in this country, people love to complain, man. Like
But
more than other places sometimes.
But nothing happens. So like, just change it.
Yeah, it's like the same thing, you know, about being offended. Like nothing happens.
Nothing happens. In the end, people are offended, and or even just things like, it's just even in this culture now that where something's only a problem for the day, and then there's something new.
Yeah. But could you relate that to what you were saying about, you know, how being the flow without a direction, right? If like you were the government in this analogy and you change the law overnight, what's the rest of your body gonna do? What's the rest of your life gonna do? You know? Like, is it gonna kind of like keep doing what it's doing to its own peril, or is it gonna just get with it? And, you know, for example, you know, if you see yourself as like a dancer, or like a healthy, fit, or whatever, you're gonna see like a great player or something again.
Yeah.
I guess only for me, it's like any time I've made a strict change, I've just made the change and I did it. If I thought about it too much, I'm not gonna do it. I'm just gonna think about it and talk about it until I've talked about it until I'm blue in the face.
Yeah, you can talking about making a plan about the plan, you know.
But like, if you don't kind of, I don't know, it's kind of hard. You can be in any place and you can just feel like you can't make the change. But if you just do it and see,
Yeah.
You just do it.
yeah.
Do it. Yeah.
That night
And
check.
it's like, yeah. But that's the thing with the structure and all that. It depends what you're trying to achieve. Like everything at the end of the day depends on why you do what you do, what you're trying to achieve.
Everything hinges on that, really, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
why?
Yeah, because for example, so when I was starting my psychotherapy business, I was just like, okay, this is what I want to do, and I created like tiny goals, like every month. This is what I'm gonna do, and that's what I'm gonna do by then. And I was like, and this is what I have to do to get there. And I was like, this is what I'm doing, you know. And that worked with that. But like with art, I'm just doing it to express. I'm just doing it to share, and then for other people to be like,
So-
yeah, I have that experience with them.
Get this right. This could be a way of measuring it. Okay. The whole point is to get that moment of self-expression, right? Maybe it's the frequency of those moments that you can have. Like, let's say you have them once a week in inspiration. You write something once a week, right? You can say that's once a week. But then, like, what my question now is, how can you induce that? You know?
I think you ask yourself, how do I feel today?
Yeah.
And you just create, whether you think it's crap or good or whatever. You get over the perfection and you just create it.
Exactly. So it's not this big thing. I have to create something
no,
today.
because
You
how
know?
do
It's
I
like
feel? Write a poem or a song about being fucking tired. Like,
because you're always
super
feeling
sleepy.
something at some point. You know? If you haven't got a pen in hand, great.
Exactly.
That's your
no,
poem.
honestly, because people overthink, like, what should I write about, or you know, just self-express.
Oh my days, that stopped me
express
so many
being-
times. Man.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Express being tired. So express being happy. Express that you just had a nice coffee. You know, like you can write about everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think that self-expression, you can find it in almost anything, almost any feeling.
So, if there were some points that you would take away from the difficulties you face in the rise, what would they be? Of how you would, I've lost the word. Attack the difficulty. That's not the right word. Tackle it.
Do you know what? Yeah. By that, you just answered that in your slip up by attacking it, right?
you just, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm the question and the answer. Yeah, man. I mean, attack is very, very harsh and might have negative kind of connotations on like first hearing. But like to attack it or approach it or constantly go at it, I think is the whole thing, man.
I think like it's like when you attack something, you know you're gonna win. And it's essentially mind over matter, right? Mm-hmm. So we need to remind ourselves. I think what's really important is we're living in an age where we have smartphones where we can put reminders on. So even to like biohack ourselves by starting off by reminding ourselves to think positively every once a day to start off with, and then next week do it twice a week and see, or just to write something once a day. This is your 10 minutes that you have, you know. But I think consistency in everything is key to how we function as a human being.
Exactly. But also to your list, I'd add fear of success, because fear of failure. Fear of failure is so common and everybody knows about it.
Man. Yeah,
Like, fear of success. Nobody
That's
expects
That's a bit of an abstract. That's a cheeky one, isn't it? You know?
How does that work?
Oh my god, there's so many like aspects to it. So fear of success. Well, first of all, if someone has some kind of, you know, childhood traumas where they always felt inferior, they're gonna look for failure. They're gonna look, even, you know, like subconsciously, until they resolve whatever issues they had in their childhood, they will feel a sense of familiarity and they will feel good when they fail. And
then that
consciously, logically, they'll be like, well, what the hell? Like, obviously, I want to succeed, but they will actually seek that safety of failure.
Sometimes it's because you don't think that you deserve to get there.
Kind of like that, exactly.
But you don't like, even though you can like mentally kind of say, no, I do deserve to get. You can reason with it. The part of yourself that's controlling your patterns is like, nah, mate, I'm on a roll here, you know. Like, you stay down for a little while, yeah, like while I do my thing, like.
Yeah, so that's like one aspect to it. Another aspect is like that you might be like, well, okay, so if I succeed, then what's gonna happen? What's next? And you kind of don't know.
Yeah.
And you don't know why you're actually doing what you're doing, so you kind of don't want to achieve the goal because you're like, well, I don't know what happens after that, so I'm just gonna stick to trying to achieve this goal forever. Or you might also worry that you'd be more successful than your friends. So some people are very like self-conscious about, oh, what if I become more successful than like my partner or my friends? What if they won't like me or whatever? Because they will feel bad. So I kind of have to stay on their level if they perceive that their friends are not successful.
Yeah, man. I mean, I think above all, I would say something from experience that really does me a good every day, or every day I can do it, which is REM, read, exercise, and meditate. It's something you can do like for literally 2.5 minutes each. You know, like who's not got that time in a day? You know, 7 minutes or 10.
It's true.
Like read something that like you're interested in and that you kind of grow your head. You know, like at the moment I'm kind of reading this book about this thing called Aikido, which is dope. We'll talk about that.
Yes.
PW,
It's like really peaceful kind of martial art that kind of trains the spirit and stuff, man. Like I had my first class last week. It was dope, man. It was so dope. It was just like, it was just straight up water in it. Like water, non-resistant, but like you know you can't mess with it. You know what I'm saying? So that's like reading, exercise, like anything like mobility thing. You know, while you're watching a movie or something, just wiggle about a bit. You know, like, and then meditate. You know, like just. It's not this grand peace-seeking exercise thing, you know, just like sit down, shut the fuck up for like a few minutes, close your eyes, and focus on your breath.
That's it.
That's what you need to do, man. Like that's it. Like okay, you got thoughts, whatever, man. Like everyone's got thoughts. If you didn't like, seriously, man. Like,
Yes,
if you had no
sensei.
thoughts, you know you'd have no thoughts, man. You're like, you know what I'm saying, like.
You can also combine the exercise and the meditation, right? So
For real, because you will zone out at some point, you know?
Exactly.
Like, you know, yeah, definitely, like, you get that a
Active
lot.
meditation.
Yeah.
You can meditate while you're doing stuff.
There's a guy called Wim Hof, and he's
Yeah.
presented this technique where he's just breathing, essentially just breathing deeply. And what that does physiologically to the air sacs in your lungs and to your cells on a cellular level, it puts more oxygen into your system. So that helps us so much. He says that we're designed to use air as a source of energy, but we function on the very least that we can by our normal breathing. We don't breathe deeply. So by simply breathing deeply, you can enter a state of focus whereby you can achieve things that you want to do. So when I'm on my turbo trainer on my bicycle and I'm doing the Wim Hof, I can exert more power in wattage on my legs while keeping my heart rate the same.
For real.
Because there's energy I'm getting from the air. And also what I've noticed mentally is I have a focus. And that focus keeps me going, and I feel so driven in that state. So we have energy from the air around us, and like these techniques I think are important to spread out when you get a chance.
Sure, man. Something I learned recently was to keep your mind in your center, your navel just underneath, that's your core. Like keeping your mind there, it just makes you completely more stable, you know?
Like do it in drama.
For real, man. I do it on my bike now all the time. Like I feel like there's more. My breath can get power to my legs quicker if my head is just like in that area.
You're centered,
Yeah, I've weird shit, man. It just works. It just works.
It also signals like safety to your organs. So if you have like panic attacks or anxiety, then it also calms that down if you breathe deep.
Panic attacks and anxiety, you can just breathe, like keep your mind.
Also,
Wow, man. Cool.
Because that signals safety. That's where your organs feel like, oh, I'm safe. And anxiety is danger. Like you're sensing danger.
Yeah, I mean, like being nervous about performing or creating something could give you that feeling, you know. So
exactly.
You could like use a bit of breath and keep your mind at your center to also help the creative process as well.
Yeah, everything is so tied together.
Yeah, like a big blanket.
It is.
So at the end of around the end of the show, I have a quote for every episode.
All right.
Lay it on.
So this quote is by Bertrand Russell, and it goes, "Real life is a perpetual compromise between the ideal and the possible. But the world of pure reason knows no compromise, no practical limitations, no barrier to creative activity."
Yeah.
Very nice quote.
And my final question for you guys is, what would you ask? What do you have to say to your future self?
Whoa. Oh my god. About what? About anything?
Yeah, just
Maybe you go first. I don't know. I need to think about it.
What I would say to my future self.
yeah.
Sorry it took so long, bro.
Yeah. I heard that.
Yeah, just do the important shit every day. That's it.
I'd say you don't have to do everything at once. Yeah. That's what I say to my present self as well.
Yeah. Oh, for sure, yeah. Kidnapped man. What is time?
Ourselves. Now that's a whole other discussion. Like,
Oh, for real,
really
man.
now.
For real. Cool.
So yeah, that's been Double Cabbage this month. If you haven't watched episode 1, check it out. Episode 2 should be out now, so you should check that out. And then episode 3 will be out when you watch it. So
Cool.
It's a thing inside a thing inside of another thing.
it's a double cabbage.
Cool. Peace out.